As the first light of dawn bathed the city of Arvandor in a warm, golden hue, Alexander Gregorian stepped out of the train that had brought him to his mysterious destination. The city's air was thick with the competing scents of spices and exhaust fumes, a heady blend that seemed to cling to every surface like a second skin. A cacophony of sounds assaulted his ears. Shopkeepers hawking their wares, cars honking impatiently, and the shuffling of countless feet navigating the maze-like streets. Life pulsates through these veins, thought Alexander, as he watched the city unfold before him like an ancient tapestry. The architectural wonders of Arvandor were a sight to behold, a blend of Gothic masterpieces intertwined with modern marvels of glass and steel. Each structure seemed to whisper secrets from the past, beckoning Alexander closer, drawing him deeper into the heart of the city. "Is this where I'll find you, grandfather?" Alexander murmured under his breath, his eyes scanning the skyline for any sign of the man who had raised him, taught him, and then vanished without a trace. "And is this where the bracelet lies hidden, waiting for me to unlock its powers?" His thoughts were interrupted by the car horn of his awaiting vehicle, a sleek black limousine that pulled up alongside the curb. Alexander approached it, his stride confident and determined. This city was a labyrinth of mysteries, but he was ready to unravel them one by one. The drive to his new home was a blur of contrasting images, towering skyscrapers casting long shadows over narrow alleys, street vendors peddling exotic curiosities, and children playing amidst the chaos with abandon. As they approached their destination, the streets grew wider and the buildings more opulent, the landscape shifting to reflect the wealth and power of the city's elite. "Welcome home, Master Gregorian," said the driver as they pulled up to a grand mansion nestled amidst a beautifully manicured garden. Alexander's eyes widened at the sight before him. The building seemed to rise like a phoenix from the lush greenery that surrounded it, its towering pillars standing sentinel over the estate. "Home," Alexander mused, as he stepped out of the limousine and onto the gravel path that led to the entrance. The mansion was elegant in its design, its white marble facade shimmering under the morning sun like a vision from a dream. He could sense the history within its walls, the generations of Gregorians who had walked these halls before him, and felt a strange sort of kinship with them, a connection forged by blood and destiny. "Let's find you, grandfather," he whispered, his voice barely audible amidst the rustling leaves and the distant hum of the city. "And let's uncover the secret that this city hides." With that, Alexander Gregorian crossed the threshold into his new life, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. In Arvandor, the past, present, and future seemed to collide and intertwine, forming a tapestry as intricate and enigmatic as the man at its center. And as Alexander stood on the precipice of discovery, he couldn't help but feel that he was finally where he was always meant to be. The sleek black car glided to a halt before the grand entrance of the mansion, its tires crunching softly against the gravel driveway. As the engine purred into silence, Alexander Gregorian stared through the tinted window at his new home, his expression as stoic and distant as ever. "Home," he muttered under his breath, a subtle sigh escaping his lips. His eyes roamed over the mansion's intricate details. The way the sunlight caught the ornate gold trimmings, the shadows that played upon its majestic arches, and the ivy creeping silently up the pristine white walls. With measured grace, Alexander stepped out of the car, the soft breeze ruffling his immaculately styled hair. He was dressed in a crisp navy suit, tailored to perfection, with a silken pocket square peeking out from his jacket. The collar of his white shirt hugged his neck just right, and his polished leather shoes gleamed like obsidian in the sunlight. As he stood there, surveying his new domain, an air of sophistication seemed to surround him, claiming him as its own. "Master Alexander!" a deep voice intoned, rich with warmth and loyalty. Jameson, the butler, had appeared at the open front door, his tall figure casting a long shadow onto the steps. He was clad in the traditional garb of a butler, complete with a white-gloved hand resting upon the silver handle of the door. His graying hair was neatly combed back, and his sharp blue eyes held a spark of intelligence that belied his age. "Welcome to your new home, sir." "Thank you, Jameson," Alexander replied, offering a small nod in return. As he approached the front door, the shadows seemed to dance around him like ghosts of the past, whispering secrets meant for his ears alone. "May I take your briefcase, sir?" Jameson inquired, his voice steady and respectful. "Of course," Alexander replied, handing the leather-bound case to Jameson as he stepped into the grand entryway. In this moment, the unspoken bond between the two men was palpable, a connection forged through years of unwavering loyalty and trust. "Your mother sends her regards," Jameson continued, his voice still warm but tinged with a hint of sadness. "She wishes she could be here, but her latest film is keeping her quite busy." "Of course," Alexander murmured, his eyes wandering around the lavish interior, taking in its grandeur. His heart ached for his mother's presence, but he knew she was pursuing her dreams, just as he was chasing his. "Your father will be joining us tomorrow," Jameson added, his impeccable posture betraying no emotion. "He has some urgent business matters to attend to at the moment." Alexander's eyes flicked toward Jameson, his brow furrowing slightly. He wondered if his father truly understood the gravity of their situation, the reason they'd come to Arvindor in the first place, but as quickly as the thought appeared, it vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. "Very well," Alexander said, his voice quiet yet firm. "Let us begin our search, Jameson. There is much to uncover here, and time is of the essence." "Indeed, sir," Jameson agreed, his gaze unwavering as he met Alexander's determined stare. "We'll leave no stone unturned." As the two men stood side by side, their shared purpose uniting them in wordless understanding, the grand mansion seemed to echo with whispers of the past and hints of the future, a symphony of secrets waiting to be unraveled. The door to Alexander's new room swung open, revealing an opulent space that seemed to envelop him in a cocoon of luxury. Richly textured walls adorned with tasteful artwork framed the room, while a plush carpet stretched out beneath his feet like a silken sea. In the center, a grand four-poster bed stood proudly, draped in fine Egyptian cotton sheets that whispered their invitation to rest. "Your belongings have been placed in the closet and dresser, sir," Jameson informed him, his voice as polished as the brass doorknob he'd just turned. "Please let me know if you require any assistance." "Thank you, Jameson," Alexander replied, stepping into the room and inhaling the subtle scent of lavender that hung delicately in the air. As the butler retreated, Alexander approached the dresser, a magnificent piece crafted from dark mahogany, and began unpacking his neatly folded clothes with the precision of a surgeon. "Family heirlooms and personal effects have been placed on this side of the room." Jameson gestured toward a small collection of items clustered atop an antique writing desk. Each piece was carefully positioned, from the intricate silver pocket watch his grandfather had gifted him on his 16th birthday to the leather-bound journal his mother had given him just before their departure. "Everything seems to be in order," Alexander murmured, his fingers brushing against the smooth cover of the journal. He could almost hear his mother's voice, encouraging him to write down his thoughts and experiences in this strange city. "Get some rest, sir," Jameson suggested gently, leaving Alexander to his thoughts. "Your first day at school awaits." Morning sunlight filtered through the ornate window treatments, casting a warm glow over Alexander's face as he awoke. With a sigh, he slipped out of bed and dressed in a crisp navy suit, fastening his cufflinks with deft fingers. He surveyed his reflection in the mirror, ensuring every detail was flawless before making his way downstairs to where Jameson awaited him. "Good luck on your first day, Master Alexander," the butler said, handing over a leather briefcase and offering a small smile. "Farewell." I shall see you when you return." "Thank you, Jameson," Alexander replied, stepping into the sleek black car that would take him to school. As he walked through the hallowed halls of Arvindor's prestigious academy, Alexander exuded an air of authority that turned heads and hushed whispers. His classmates couldn't help but stare at the impeccably dressed young man who moved with such purpose and grace. "Did you hear? That's Alexander Gregorian," one girl whispered to her friend, her eyes wide with awe. "His family is insanely rich." "Really?" a boy chimed in, glancing curiously at the newcomer. "No wonder he looks like he just stepped off the cover of a magazine." Alexander ignored the murmurs around him, focusing instead on the task at hand, finding his grandfather and the elusive bracelet. As he navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the school, he felt the weight of the challenge ahead, but also the undeniable thrill of possibility. "Let the games begin," he thought, feeling the pulse of Arvindor's secrets beneath his feet. Alexander's first day at school unfolded like a meticulously arranged chessboard, each move calculated and precise. As his classmates approached him with wide-eyed curiosity, he responded with polite nods and curt words, keeping them at arm's length. He was an enigma, wrapped in tailored suits and silk ties, enticing yet distant. "Hey, I'm Kevin," a lanky boy with sandy hair offered, extending a hand toward Alexander. "Alexander," he replied, shaking the proffered hand briefly before releasing it. "Pleasure." "Are you new here?" Kevin asked, attempting to spark conversation as they walked side by side down the hallway. "Indeed," Alexander said, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. "But let's not waste time with small talk. I have matters to attend to." "Sure thing, man," Kevin said, shrugging off the dismissal with a friendly grin. "Catch you later." As Alexander continued his solitary journey through the maze of hallways, the chatter around him faded into a blur of indistinct noise. His mind was a fortress, impenetrable by the everyday concerns of his peers. He had no time for idle banter. His quest demanded his full attention. Just then, a burst of laughter echoed through the corridor, slicing through Alexander's reverie like a knife. A girl with striking blonde hair and piercing blue eyes emerged from the crowd, her smile bright and infectious. Anemona Parker seemed to glide along the hallway, her every step buoyed by effervescent energy. "Annie, you won't believe what happened in calculus today," one of her friends exclaimed, linking arms with her as they walked together. "Tell me everything, Jess," Anemona replied, leaning in with genuine interest. Her laughter rang out once more, a symphony of joy that seemed to animate the very air around her. "Is that Anemona Parker?" Alexander wondered, watching from a distance as the golden-haired girl conversed with ease, drawing others into her orbit. "What an unusual creature she is." "Annie, have you met the new guy?" another friend asked, nodding toward Alexander. "Alexander Gregorian?" "No, not yet," Anemona said, casting a glance in his direction. "But there's something intriguing about him, don't you think?" "Definitely," Jess agreed, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. "I'll bet he has some fascinating stories to tell." "Perhaps," Anemona mused, her gaze lingering on Alexander for a moment longer before returning to her friends. "Time will tell, I suppose." As the school day drew to a close and the sun dipped low on the horizon, Alexander retreated to the sanctuary of his opulent home. He sat at his grand mahogany desk, fingers drumming rhythmically against the polished wood. "Anemona Parker," he murmured, the name playing like a melody in his mind. "What secrets do you hold, I wonder?" Outside his window, the city of Arvindor lay shrouded in twilight, its labyrinthine streets pulsating with enigma and danger. Little did Alexander know, his path was destined to intertwine with that of the captivating Anemona Parker, and together, they would unravel the mysteries of the fabled bracelet and their own tangled hearts. Sunlight streamed through the classroom windows, casting a warm glow on the faces of the students. Anemona sat at her desk, twirling a strand of her golden hair between her fingers as she listened to the teacher drone on about European history. Her mind, however, was elsewhere. Across the room, Alexander Gregorian leaned back in his seat, his piercing gaze fixed on the chalkboard. The new guy was an enigma, cold, detached, and almost otherworldly in his elegance. Anemona couldn't help but feel drawn to him, her curiosity piqued by his reticent demeanor. "Psst," whispered Edward from the desk beside her, snapping her out of her reverie. "What do you make of Alexander?" Anemona glanced at her twin brother, noting the playful gleam in his eyes. "He's intriguing," she admitted, "but there's something guarded about him, like he's hiding behind a wall." "Maybe he's just shy," Edward suggested, shrugging. "Or maybe he's got some secret double life as a spy or something." "Very funny, Eddie," she said with a smirk, rolling her eyes at his theatrics. "But seriously, I can't help but wonder what his story is." "Ah, the eternal question of human existence," mused Edward, leaning back in his chair. "Who are we? What are we doing here? What lies beneath the surface of our fellow beings?" "Ever the philosopher, aren't you?" Anemona teased, nudging him playfully. "But you know me, I always crave more than the ordinary." "True, true," Edward conceded, grinning. "You're a restless soul, my dear sister. Just don't forget that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures lie hidden within the most mundane moments." "Spoken like a true artist," Anemona said, her smile softening. "I'm glad you found your passion in theater, Eddie. It suits you." "Thanks, Annie," Edward replied, his eyes shining with gratitude. "And you'll find your extraordinary path, too. I know you will." As the bell rang and the classroom emptied, Anemona's gaze lingered on Alexander's retreating form. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye, a magnetic pull she couldn't quite explain. "Anemona Parker, seeker of mysteries," she whispered to herself, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Let the adventure begin." The clouds, a canvas of fiery hues, painted the sky as the sun dipped below the horizon. The school courtyard bustled with the rhythmic chaos of students, each eager to return home or escape to their after-school activities. Anemona leaned against a tree, her golden hair shimmering in the fading light, and her eyes scanning the area for Alexander. "Annie, you coming?" Edward called out, his paint-splattered backpack slung over his shoulder. "Rehearsals are starting soon." "Go ahead, I'll catch up," she replied, her voice barely louder than a whisper, her gaze unwavering. "All right," he said hesitantly, pausing for a moment before disappearing into the throng of students. It was then that Anemona spotted him, Alexander Gregorian, tall and enigmatic, striding across the courtyard with a purposeful gait. She took a deep breath and pushed herself away from the tree, her heart pounding in her chest as she made her way towards him. "Hey, you're the new guy, right?" she blurted out as she fell into step beside him. His piercing blue eyes met hers, their depths seemingly fathomless, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "Alexander Gregorian," he replied, his words clipped and precise. "And you are?" "Anemona Parker," she responded, her voice surprisingly steady despite the butterflies dancing a wild jig in her stomach. "I noticed you earlier and thought I'd say hi. Welcome to Arvindor High." "Thank you," he said, his expression unreadable. They walked in silence for a few moments, the air between them charged with unspoken curiosity. "Your family is quite prestigious, isn't it?" Anemona ventured, desperate to keep the conversation going. "Indeed," Alexander replied tersely, his eyes forward. "But I find that such things can be as much a burden as a blessing." Anemona nodded, her thoughts flashing to her own family's dark secrets. She opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the shrill ring of Alexander's phone. "Excuse me," he said curtly before answering the call. Anemona watched as his face darkened, his brows furrowing in what seemed like frustration and concern. As he walked away, she could feel the magnetic pull between them fading, leaving her with an unfamiliar sense of loss. Later that night, reclined on her bed, Anemona couldn't help but ponder the enigmatic figure that was Alexander Gregorian. Her heart ached with the knowledge that beneath his stoic exterior lay a complex web of emotions and desires that echoed her own hunger for something extraordinary. Across town, Alexander stood at his window, the city lights casting shadows across his chiseled features. He stared into the darkness, his mind replaying the encounter with Anemona Parker, the unexpected warmth behind her smile, and the vulnerability in her eyes. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of curiosity, an urge to uncover the mystery that lay hidden within this beguiling young woman. As the night cloaked Arvindor in a blanket of stars, two restless souls found themselves drawn towards each other, the threads of their fates intertwining in ways they could not yet begin to imagine. And so, the dance began, a dance of shadows, secrets, and longing that would change them both forever.